Now, House Republicans unveil their plan for regulating the financial markets. It differs in many respects from the legislation favored by congressional Democrats and the White House. Speakers at this event include Financial Services Ranking Member Spencer Baucus and Republican Whip Eric Cantor. This is about half an hour.
Thank you for coming. I'm joined by Republican Whip Cantor. We expect Conference Chair Mike Pence very soon, and the Republican leaders of the Financial Services Committee, who have been involved for the past few months in crafting a comprehensive regulatory reform proposal, which we're announcing today. Let me start by recognizing our distinguished Whip, Eric Cantor, for a statement.
Spencer, thanks very much, and I'm honored to be here with the ranking member, Spencer Baucus, and the senior members of the Financial Services Committee as we unveil, as a conference, a roadmap forward to address the number one issue that is on the minds of most Americans, which is the economy. And we all know that an economic recovery is going to be predicated upon a resumption of normal credit conditions so that we can see expansion start to happen again as far as jobs are concerned in this country. And we hear a lot, and there's a lot of coverage about the heavy hand of government right now in the financial markets. To me, it really is a heavy hand of the Obama administration. Who could have ever told that we would continue to find ourselves in a world of continued bailouts, handouts? We wake up one day and we are the proud owners of two of the largest car companies. It is this type of uncertainty and continued reach by government that this plan tries to react to and say, look, we do have a better way. We don't believe that the government should be picking winners and losers. And we want to see market forces return under a set of certain but limited rules so that innovation can occur again. And I know that I speak for the ranking member and the rest of my colleagues here in saying we stand ready, willing to work with our colleagues from across the aisle to try and forge a solution so that we can see our capital markets return to the prominence that they should enjoy as far as attracting investment capital so we can see an investment-led recovery.
Thank you, Eric. And this time I'd like to introduce our conference chair, Mike Pence.
Thanks, Spencer.
Thank you all for being here. And I especially want to thank the senior Republican on the Financial Services Committee, Spencer Baucus, for his tireless efforts on behalf of freedom and free markets. I also want to thank the other senior Republicans who've been so instrumental in bringing us to this day. Congressman Hensarling, Garrett, and Price, and all those that are gathered here, for putting out a Republican vision for restoring essential freedom to our free markets. The American people are fed up. They're fed up with endless bailouts out of Washington, D.C. They know we can't borrow and spend and bail our way back to a growing economy. And they want it to end. They recognize that bailing out every failing business really means Washington is burying future generations under a mountain range of debt and destroying the very foundation of free market capitalism that has allowed this nation to prosper for generations. Congress cannot continue to ask hardworking families who played by the rules, lived within their means, paid their bills, to bail out the irresponsible decisions of others or to bail out the failed policies in Washington, D.C. Enough is enough. Today, House Republicans are standing with the American people who've said loud and clear, no more bailouts. This package of regulatory reforms House Republicans are introducing today are built on a few simple principles. It's time to end the mania of bailouts that's consumed Washington, D.C. since last fall. It's time to end the government's ability to pick winners and losers. And it's time to restore some level of responsibility, personal responsibility in our marketplace. It is time, in short, to put freedom back into our free markets. The proposal being offered today by House Republicans under the outstanding leadership of Spencer Baucus and those gathered here today is a step in that direction, and I expect it is going to be a vision the American people will heartily welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Eric, for joining us. And Republicans are united today in offering this plan. I want to introduce the Republican team that worked over the past 2 months. Judy Biggert from Illinois, she's chairman of our Oversight Committee, and she performed a lot of ranking member. What did I say, ranking member? I'm getting ahead of myself by, what, a year and a half, I guess. But Judy, I appreciate your work. Shelley Capito, who's on the housing, is our ranking member on housing. Scott Garrett, who's our capital markets ranking member. Jeb Hensling, who's financial institutions. Ron Paul worked on this plan, has endorsed it. He's not here. Congressman Miller supports the plan. So we have come in a united way. We have 2 other people that worked on it also. We have Tom Price, who is a senior member of our committee, and Mike Castle. Mike's not here. If most of you know Mike, he's very involved over the past few days in making some decisions. But they are very supportive. And then we have our vice chairman of the committee, Randy Neugenbauer, who's in fact, as we've met over the past 2 months, we've met in Randy's office, and he has scheduled all the meetings. And we have had several meetings. We've ironed this thing out, and we knew we needed to get it right. Let me say this: financial services regulatory reform and the structure of our financial regulatory system is of critical importance, and we knew that we had to get it right. We're offering today our solutions to address the causes of the financial crisis that we've all been going through, us and the families we represent, and to create a more transparent and accountable regulatory system. You'll see that a lot of what we propose here is about accountability and transparency, and to create a system that will better protect investors, taxpayers, and consumers. Consumer protection is very important. And to hold risk takers on Wall Street responsible for their actions, not the taxpayer. In the last 2 years, we've seen unprecedented government intervention into our financial markets. The regulators have acted on many occasions with little oversight or accountability. The American people deserve better. They deserve a better financial services regulatory structure. The individuals behind me have worked diligently, as I've said, contributed immensely to our proposal. During our work, we were guided by 3 key principles. And these were principles we not only felt, but our constituents told were important to them. Number 1, you've heard it before, you're going to hear it again, no more bailouts. Has anybody missed that? No more bailouts. We think that's very important. Second, the government must stop rewarding failure and picking winners and losers. Taxpayers should never again be asked to pick up the tab for bad bets and risky decisions made by the financial industry. Third, we need to restore market discipline so that financial firms no longer expect the government to rescue them, and will no longer have to endure a command and control structure from the government. These 3 principles are essential to ensuring that we have an exit strategy from the cycle of taxpayer bailouts and government interventions that we've all witnessed in the last 6 months, and also to build a strong foundation for our financial services industry and bring back moral accountability. We're presently in the process of drafting legislation based on this proposal and these principles. At this point, I'd like to recognize the distinguished ranking member of the Housing and Community Opportunity Subcommittee, Shelley Capito from West Virginia.
Thank you. There we go. I want to thank Mr. Backus for his leadership in this, and I think we're presenting a united front, because not only do we recognize the seriousness of the issues, but I think it's important for us to join together in the large and very complex issue of regulatory reform. As we've heard, and I'll repeat again, one of our primary provisions can be summed up as no more bailouts. Our constituents have bailout fatigue, and we do too. And while we recognize that financial institutions, our constituents recognize that when financial institutions make bad choices, they have to live with those results. Poor decisions should have consequences, and we can't reward bad behavior. Moreover, though, Wall Street needs to have certainty about the fact that government cannot and should not be charged with picking winners and losers in the marketplace. When firms find themselves with serious financial challenges, our proposal calls for an enhanced resolution through a new chapter of the Bankruptcy Code, making it more suitable for ensuring the orderly unwinding of troubled financial institutions. By facilitating coordination between regulators and the courts, we can bring the technical expertise and specialized expertise to the table when these complex financial institutions are at stake. I think we highlighted what's happened. A lot of times we fell back on the complexity of the instruments, and nobody really knew how to address those and the systemic risk involved. There are already special classes of bankruptcies for farmers, railroads, and municipalities. Financial institutions are very complex, and affording them an expedited class of bankruptcy makes sense. So with this proposal, market participants will know the consequences of taking on too much risk. There will be no more question of waiting for a government bailout. Next, I'd like to turn it over to Randy Nagelbauer.
Thank you, Shelley. Another aspect of our proposal is to establish a market stability and capital adequacy board. Now, a lot of people have been talking about, I think the Democrats in the White House have been talking about naming one person as the systemic risk regulator. We think that centralizes too much control for one individual. We also are against the concept of firms being designated as systemically risky, because that we believe gives that an unfair advantage in the marketplace. We've already seen that. We saw that the government got into the picking winners and losers by determining who was systemically risky and who was not. That's not good policy for this country. How does this work? Well, what would happen is we would form this group. They would be appointed. The Treasury would lead that. We would have people that are a part of the regulatory structure, the new structure, and possibly some outside people. Then their task would be to get together on a periodic basis and look at not only the entities that they're regulating, but also look out into the marketplace, have discussions to determine what's going on in the marketplace, new products, new things going on, what activity is going on under another regulator's purview is going on on another side. And so being able to have that dialogue and to begin to have those kind of discussions, then that allows that discussion to begin to let those regulators and go back. And the second part of that is capital adequacy. If you really want to regulate the entities in this country, establishing how much capital for the activities that they're involved in is a huge way to do that, and a more effective way to do that. And so we think that dialogue, it provides a better forum, a more efficient forum, and it doesn't put the government, one, in the business of picking winners and losers, and secondly, it gets it out of the systemic risk business. We don't want the taxpayers, do not want to be back in this situation again, where they've been impressed into to being shareholders when they're back home trying to make their mortgage payment, make their car payments. And so we believe this is an effective way to address this particular issue. It's now my honor to introduce the gentlewoman from Illinois, Ms. Biggert.
Thank you, Randy, and I'm here to talk about how our plan answers the question, what about the consumer? First of all, we have new duties for the new regulator of depository institutions. This regulator will work to empower consumers to make sound financial decisions. It will regularly update, improve, simplify, and test disclosures. It will update and enforce consumer protection regulations. These are currently responsibilities that are spread around about a dozen different federal financial services regulators. And second, we have a new task for FLEC. Consumers who have been wrong call my office all the time and say, who do I turn to? Right now, how is a consumer to know if he or she should contact the OCC, the OTC, the NCUA, the FDIC, or the Fed for a few of the agencies? So we've tasked the existing Financial Literacy and Education Commission, which already coordinates federal agencies' efforts to help consumers with a new job. We're going to support actually it's a bipartisan proposal that I worked on last Congress. We require this commission to set up a one-stop shop, a 1-800 number, and a website for consumers to report to see if he or she has been wronged. And the commission will collect the data and coordinate with the appropriate federal regulators to resolve the issue or identify trends that need to be addressed in the new regulation or fraud. And then third is the crackdown on fraud. Finally, when it comes down to cracking down on fraud, we mean business. Our proposal bolsters law enforcement's resources, increases civil and monetary penalties for violations, and maximizes restitution to victims. So to protect consumers against fraud and help consumers make informed decisions, our proposal empowers consumers. And next, I'd like to introduce Scott Garrett, the Capital Markets ranking member.
Thank you for that. And before I begin, let me just also say thank you to our conference chair, Mike, for being with us today. Also, thank you to our whip, Eric Cantor, not only for being with us, but also for being so personally involved, deeply interested, both himself personally and his staff as well, on these very important financial issues. Thank you, of course, goes to I'll say chairman, to our chairman, Spencer Backus, for leading us in this endeavor to bring us to where I am quite honestly quite excited with the final product that we have out here today. It's something that we worked on long and hard, and I think we can all stand up here and be proud of and wish to work hard to see that this actually comes into law. I'll join with my colleagues also in saying that the tenets here is that I think we all could agree, as the American public does, that we want no more bailouts, that we want no more of the federal government picking winners and losers, and we want to make sure that the taxpayer is not put on the hook going forward. Now, we do it in one area that I'll speak about just for a minute, and that's dealing with the Federal Reserve. And in there, you can think of it in three ways. We want to have transparency, we want to have accountability, and we want to have fiscal and monetary responsibility. On transparency, we want to have for them, like we have for every other aspect of government, to allow for the General Accounting Office, the GAO, to be able to go in and do an extensive audit, to provide for the extensive and open and honest government that we're all calling for. In the area of accountability, same thing. Likewise, in an area that there, as I believe, will be bipartisan support for us, because we've heard that there's a need to address the aspect within 13.3 and all the exigent circumstances and activity that the Fed has been done before, and to try to draw a little ring around that. We need to do that as well. And we can do that simply by saying that before they go forward in any such activities in the future, we need to define them. We need to have some oversight and accountability by the executive through the Treasury and Congress as well. And finally, in the area of fiscal and monetary responsibility, another thing that the American public is looking for. And here all we're asking to do is to reestablish for the Fed to hone their interest in what they originally were set up for, and that is monetary policy, to take their other activities that may distract them away and allow them to focus on this, and so that we have the responsibility in that area. If we do these things, along with the other points that we raised already, we will be doing this. We will be drawing a line in the sand from what has occurred over the last year and the year ahead with regard to bailout. There will be no more bailouts. There will be no more pickings and winners and losers. There will be market integrity, and we will get, just as Eric Cantor mentioned earlier, the economic growth that this country so badly needs. Thank you. Oh, and at this point, I was ready to leave. You know, I thought that I said it all, and so the person who will say even better than I, more articulately than I, the gentleman who has put so much hard effort and work into this, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Henserling.
You certainly made up for the slight. No nation can bail out, borrow, and spend its way into prosperity. And that is why I'm happy that Republicans are united in saying no more bailouts. At the epicenter of our current economic turmoil are federal policies that either incented, cajoled, or mandated financial institutions to loan money to people to buy homes who ultimately could not afford to keep them. Of all these failed policies, none loom larger than those which created the government-sanctioned monopolies of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. The expectation, the implicit guarantee of the federal government behind those two GSEs allowed them to swell to unimaginable size, make profits that otherwise could not have been gained in the marketplace, and now expose taxpayers to over $5 trillion of risk. In the 21st century, our housing system can exist, operate, and prosper without Fannie and Freddie being allowed to monopolize a market, privatize their profits, and socialize their losses. Now, although current market conditions preclude immediate sweeping action to end Fannie and Freddie's market distortions, the current GSE model is broken. It is irreparably broken. It must be altered. Once we have stabilized our economy, the Republican Financial System Reform Bill will, over a reasonable period of time, transition our secondary mortgage market away from government-sanctioned monopolies towards a competitive free market. Any piece of legislation that purports to reform our financial system and does not touch Fannie or Freddie cannot be taken seriously. In the transition period, the Republican bill will ensure that Fannie and Freddie are financially rock solid, limited in scope, and laser focused on an achievable public good. Their conservatorship will sunset under our bill, their portfolios will shrink, and their government subsidies will wind down. Above all, the Republican bill will protect taxpayers from ever again having to backstop the mother of all bailouts, that being Fannie and Freddie. And now it's my honor to introduce the chairman of the Republican Study Committee, the gentleman from Georgia, Dr. Tom Price.
Thank you so much. I want to thank you all for coming. I can't tell you how pleased, truly pleased I am to stand united with my Republican colleagues to champion the reforms that will restore the function and the integrity of our regulatory system. We find ourselves in the current challenge today not due to deregulation, but due to an ineffective, unresponsive regulatory structure. Now, the Democrats' solution, as they've talked about, is to guarantee more bailouts through a systemic risk regulator. Their plan would establish a permanent bailout agency. The American people are sick and tired of bailouts, and so are we. There should be no more federal bailouts. It's time to end having Washington pick winners and losers in the marketplace. It's time to end this political economy. That's not what made us the greatest nation in the history of the world. Our plan embraces principles and the rule of law. It reforms the current law to facilitate the unwinding of insolvent non-bank institutions. We ensure that those charged with the responsibility for oversight have the authority to accomplish the necessary regulatory actions. Our plan ensures that the Federal Reserve receives the transparency and accountability demanded by every single American. And our plan will restore the integrity of our system and instill the confidence necessary for free market capitalism and our nation to survive and to thrive by remembering the principle that if we remove all risk, we remove all reward, and we become a very different and a very bland society. This is a thoughtful and a common sense plan and piece of legislation that will be produced from it that embraces the principles that Americans know and love. We urge all of our colleagues to adopt and embrace this positive reform. It's my honor to yield back to the ranking member, Mr. Baucus.
Thank you, and I appreciate all my ranking member comments, and I appreciate the leadership of being here. Yesterday, I met with Leader Boehner and several representatives from different groups to outline some of this program, and we I think there was a pretty unanimous agreement that this was a comprehensive and sound approach. At this time, I want to take questions. Now, we are going to pass out. This plan is not a plan of talking points. It is actually a substantive plan, several pages long, single-space typewritten. A lot of it, the questions you'll probably ask now, you would probably have answered just by reading this plan. But at this time, we'll take questions.
When are you planning to introduce the legislation, and what kind of response are you getting from Chairman Frank on this proposal?
I'll take those in reverse order. Chairman Frank has called twice today asking for a copy of the plan. And we have just sent him a copy simultaneous with this press conference, so I have not heard from him. We have all along in this process, we wanted to put out a plan, what we consider our solutions, what we consider our blueprint for preventing what happened last year, and for protecting, as I said, consumers, investors, and taxpayers. And we want very much to work in a bipartisan way across the aisle, and we hope by putting out this comprehensive plan that we'll be able to compare our plan with the other plan and work across the aisle in a bipartisan way. As you know, things work better in that regard. Do any other members have
And how soon would you introduce the bill?
No, one question per
Ranking member, the American people seem to want regulation, and I'm wondering if that will change by the fall, and does this bill adequately address that concern? And can you articulate that to the American people, so to speak?
Yeah, I would say that what the American people want, number one, is they want to avoid what has happened in the last 6 months or year with our financial services industry and thus our economy. And we believe that we can have smarter regulations, not more regulations.
I wonder if you could, or your colleagues could be more specific about point 2. Which of the pickings and winners and losers do you wish had not happened? Which would you have let go, or in other words, which of the outcomes we know, Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, etc., shouldn't have happened in your view, and how would it have been better to let it happen?
Maybe difference of opinion, but we don't want to pick any winners and losers.
I'd like to say something about that. If you go back to September or even into March when a lot of this was occurring, when it began to occur, a lot of the decisions, if you recall, were done over a weekend. There's no transparency or accountability or uniform plan. And then you would almost, I would wake up in the morning, Monday morning, to find out who won and who lost, who was going to go bankrupt and who was going to get saved. And I don't think that's a method that the American people, who want to know what's going on and know that their investments are safe, their future's safe in terms of their economics. And I think our plan brings forward, I think, some very good ideas to avoid those kind of scenarios.
And on that point, one of the things that I have found in talking to stakeholders, talking to investors, talking to people back in my district, I represent New Jersey, so a lot of investors there, is that they continue to literally sit on the sideline today with regard to their investments. Why? Because they do not know what the rules of the road are going to be today or tomorrow, and who the administration is going to pick as a winner or loser tomorrow. And so why invest their dollars, or why invest their pension funds and the like into some entity that may be on the losing side of that equation tomorrow? So that's why, I'll close on this and turn it over to Jeb, that's why I made the reference earlier that we're drawing a line from what it was in the past to going forward, where we'll have a system in place that everyone will know what the mechanism will be for failing institutions, what the mechanism will be for successful institutions, and the like. And so the rules will be clearly spelled out, and so investors will get back into the marketplace, and the economy will grow. But I think Jeb from Texas would like to speak on that.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm not sure how useful the question is in this sense. Different members had different views, for example, on TARP. But I think it is largely accepted now that a piece of legislation that ostensibly was designed for financial stability and for taxpayer protection has now morphed into a vehicle to be leveraged to advance a social, a political, and economic agenda of the administration that is plunging this nation further into debt. In this unified Republican proposal, number one, having the Federal Reserve be able to tend to their monetary policy, having an enhanced chapter of the bankruptcy code, and having the Fed still having the ability on an emergency basis under 13.3 to provide liquidity to the system, but not to bail out individual firms and pick winners and losers. What's important is what we need to do going forward.
I wanted to ask either Mr. Hensarling or anybody who wants to comment about Barney Frank's executive compensation plan. The say on pay believes that it will add accountability and that right now compensation rules don't go far enough to punish bad behavior. Anyone want to react?
We address that in that we on executive compensation we have our market stability and capital adequacy commission, and one of the things they'll look at is certain practices that they believe are risky for the economy as a whole or for the financial services as a specific parts of that. If this commission had been in effect over the past 2 or 3 years, they might have identified the fact that mortgage originators were sometimes paid by the volume of loans that they made, not by the ability of the borrower to repay. And in fact, people had started identifying that as a problem, and I wish we'd had that commission to say that was a problem. What Chairman Frank, of course, advocated today was allowing, and through an intervention, taking away the CEO or the board of directors or even the shareholders, in some cases, ability to set compensation. And we believe, and this is, we believe that is the soundest system to allow corporation and its board to set the pay.
Wait, I'm sorry. So you disagree with this plan? You said we agree. Just wanted to clarify.
No, disagree.
We have time for one more question.
I don't see anything specific in here on over-the-counter derivatives, credit default swaps, that sort of thing.
But yeah, it's in there. It's
Well, our market stability and capital adequacy portion of that is exactly what that's designed for. Is these regulating entities get together, looking at behaviors that, as I said, under their purview, they begin to analyze how much those then are being used by some of these other institutions, and they begin to look at what is the appropriate policy. And in many cases, we found out that a lot of that activity was going on a very leveraged basis. And now, under this provision, this group could come together, then that particular regulator that could begin to set capital standards if that entity is going to begin to engage in that kind of activity. If you're going to have market integrity, and if you're going to have the marketplace be the primary regulator, you set the capital standards, and then you say, okay, if you want to be in this particular business, this is your capital standard. Then that entity has got to go out and raise that capital, and then hopefully the marketplace is looking at that behavior and saying they're going to need that much capital. Do we want to risk that capital? And so you really end up with two regulators. You'll end up with a regulator kind of establishing some minimum capital requirements, and then you have the marketplace, which is by far the best regulator that you can have, then ascertaining whether that particular security is something that the potential return versus the risk is something that the marketplace wants to invest in. But you don't have a systemic risk regulator or some very strict regulatory agency out there saying we're going to ban that or we're going to abolish that. We're basically trying to keep the market principles in there, but yet making sure you're going to be in that business, you're going to have adequate capital to back up your transaction.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Still not getting it.